Dan Cohen. I'm Dean of the Library and Professor of History at Northeastern University.
I'm Thomas Padilla. I'm the Public Interest AI Strategist at the Authors Alliance.
So the origin of the project is really our look at what AI looks like right now. And there are many big models out there from OpenAI or Anthropic or from Google. These are great and powerful models that are getting more powerful all the time. But something that I think we noticed and that others have noticed is that they're built on a set of materials that's rather different from what you would find, say, in the average research library. There are YouTube videos, there are Reddit comments, there are tweets. And yes, there are some books, but certainly not 100 million books, which is a rough estimate of the number of books that are out there on the shelves of research libraries. And there are other materials as well that research libraries have. Libraries have archives and special collections. These are all the primary sources and secondary sources for research in the academy, and also valued by the general public as a sort of storehouse of truth. And so our feeling was that AI itself, just writ large, would benefit from a greater incorporation of materials like those on the shelves of research libraries. And in particular, we thought that books would be a good starting place since they are some of our greatest cultural productions. They are long format, very sort of rationally designed objects that have deep thought and carry out some of our most important sort of transmissions of knowledge and information from one generation to the next. So we thought it was important to think about how we could have some version of AI that was more focused on these kinds of materials, and then how to do that. And that's a very big question of how you do that. A lot of these books are still under copyright. And also there are ethical and privacy questions that we could discuss as well. But the main factor is, how do we, as a coalition of institutions, nonprofit institutions, libraries, archives, potentially museums and other organizations, how could we get together and build some kind of project that would enable AI to use these very high value productions of culture like books?
So we, want to establish a corpus at scale of books that could be used for the development of AI itself. As Dan was mentioning, the data resources that we know that are used to train predominant models that are available, they're really just not taking. They're not making use of the most representative set of data possible, and singly and in aggregate across research libraries, we have a massive amount of unique and highly valuable data. So we do want to, of course, prioritize uses of a public interest corpus by researchers and students in all different kinds of disciplines to continue to advance knowledge in different areas.
Right now, you can ask Claude or ChatGPT questions about history, and that's great. And they'll generally answer them correctly with the materials that they found, as you note, largely off of the web and other born digital sources. But you can't ask the kind of longitudinal, deep research kinds of questions without actually having the kind of long-form contextual information that you'd find in a book. So I'm by training a Victorianist. There are millions of books actually written and published in the Victorian period itself. And then, of course, there are millions of books about the Victorian period, ranging from fiction to nonfiction and other formats. And really only a small slice of those are currently sort of in the weighting of these large language models. So we believe there is a kind of opportunity and a gap for doing a more academic focus, either small language models or finding ways to bring in sort of a slice of the collection that might be topical and have that produce actually a better result than the generative AI that currently exists.
A point of emphasis in this project is, trying to develop a solution for enabling the training with in-copyright content, in copyright books. One of the things that we commonly hear from researchers is that they're just quite practically frustrated by the ability to access and do computational work with in copyright books. And that's a vast amount of cultural production where there's all sorts of sort of legal policy and just logistical barriers to them getting access to data to ask questions that are and do research that is perhaps has more contemporary saliency. Right, so it's a real challenge for disciplines across the humanities, social sciences, computer science, and so forth. One of the challenges pertains to scope, right? So, as Dan was alluding to prior, our focus in this initial project is on proving the use case for books at scale. But of course, just at this conference, we've had people say, well, I have special collections pertaining to the historic development of the water resources in the American West. Might that be useful in a project like this? And I think the answer is yes, that would be interesting and that would be useful, especially in the climate context. It's a bunch of sort of non-repeatable sort of climate data, right? Often kind of tied into special collections, field notebooks, and so forth. That would be highly valuable to understanding, say, something like climate change.
Do we even have a sense of how much of the iceberg has actually been digitized, right? And it probably is similar to an iceberg where maybe 10%, right? I mean, look, we know that there are efforts, Google Books being among them, and the stored books in HathiTrust, where you can talk about 10 or 20 or maybe even 30 million books that may have been digitized globally, but that's still a minority of the books that are out there. They're obviously concentrated in certain cultures and regions of the world. So there'll be lots of materials. And then when you add in literally billions of objects that are in special collections and archives, then you end up with a significant amount of material that's sort of nowhere near being ingested into any kind of LLM.
Another big goal of the project is we're trying to level the playing field for non-commercial actors to gain access to training data at scale. Currently, predominantly, access to the best, most comprehensive, largest training data is, largely the province of, very well-resourced, for-profit companies. So where does that leave sort of an academic researcher in an institution that, say, cannot secure sort of an industry affiliation? Kind of leaves them in the lurch, right? So we're trying to level the playing field and commit to this public interest.
Whenever you talk about AI, you're talking about potentially very resource intensive kinds of processes, whether it's digitization and cleaning of data that goes into a corpus that will be used to train a model, or the compute power itself, of course, although maybe the costs are coming down on that, as we've seen recently with DeepSeek and other models that are trained for a fraction of the cost of some of the frontier models. The question for us is this question of scope and parameters, right? So is the end result of this maybe just a curatorial service that shovels out a whole bunch of books and other materials to a researcher, to a member of the public who wants to create a small language model or some amount? Are we doing the training ourselves? Are we running actual technical infrastructure with significant amounts of compute? Are we running sort of a more modest kind of technical infrastructure that EDUCAUSE's audience would be quite familiar with, where maybe we have some APIs and others can build some software to pull out sections of the corpus that they might want to use? So all of those sort of different scaled models would really produce a kind of different sort of organization. And of course, we're also quite familiar that there are organizations out there that might want to take on this role. So really our goal for this project for the calendar year of 2025 is to listen to a lot of people, to talk to a lot of people like your membership, and to decide what we think the best game plan for this is, and to really map out. We will end up writing with our colleagues a report to say, we believe the organization for a public interest corpus should look like this. We're trying to get a lot of use cases, satisfy those, and then talk about how a lightweight organization might be able to serve those needs.
We'll be holding a workshop in Oakland in the fall, likely in October. We, of course, also hold one-on-one sort of informational sessions if people are interested in talking with a member or a couple members of the project team, happy to set up those calls. We may need to offer sort of a virtual workshop as well, given the level of interest that we're getting in the project.
And we should note there's also ways to reach out and get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Traditional means, email, etc.
Yeah.
Publicinterestcorpus.org is where you can find all the further information about the project. And I believe there is some contact form through that website as well.